Given the recent COVID spread in our community, I ask that members of the public please wear masks and social distance as possible, and complimentary masks are on the table there. But I see pretty much everybody's wearing a mask, so I will say thank you very, very much. Now let's stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As citizens of our community, we will conduct ourselves in accordance with Newtown's core character attributes as displayed on our character tree. We will be responsible for our actions and show respect for each other. We will interact peacefully, productively, and politely. We will be trustworthy and honest and show compassion towards others. Newtown's continued success is contingent upon our ability to persevere, to follow through our commitments, and to stay focused on the truth.
Thank you very much. On to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion? Jen?
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda. Hold on. I move that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda, which includes the correspondence report.
Second the motion.
And the donation?
Sure, it wasn't listed on here, but I'm going to, so. Okay, I move that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda, which includes the donation to public school and the correspondence report.
Do I have a second?
I second the motion.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Unanimous? That brings us to public participation. As a Board of Education, we have a duty to provide a respectful and equitable public space for all members of our community to provide the input that they would like to share with the board. It is my responsibility as chair to facilitate communication between the public and the board within that space. Behaviors such as loud and disruptive clapping, that in practice quiet opposing views, thwarts the board's duty to provide a respectful and equitable space for public input. Also, comments from the public to other members of the public have no place in the board's public participation. If public participation becomes disrespectful or intimidating, I may be forced to close or limit public participation and instead ask that remaining comments be sent to the board by other means, like email. During the first public participation, the board welcomes commentary regarding items on the agenda. After being recognized, please state your name and address for the record. We request that speakers be respectful and limit comments to not more than 3 minutes. The Board of Education does not discuss personnel items or student matters in public. During the second public participation, commentary may address the agenda or may introduce issues for the board to consider in the future. The board does not engage in dialogue during either public comment period. If you would desire more information or answers to specific questions, please email the board. And to those of you who do participate, words can get muffled, especially if wearing a mask. Please read over the minutes to ensure that your words were properly represented. If not, please send corrections to me. And thank you. Public participation is now open. We start with the phone. Is there anyone on the phone who would like to address the board? Star 6 to unmute. Hearing none. Is there any public participation from the floor? Seeing none, public participation is now closed. That brings us to the reports. Okay, so I just want to make a comment. The minutes as presented correctly represent what I said about the process for the superintendent search. However, there was an error in my understanding of the process. The request for proposals is used for canvassing proposals from third-party search organizations, not applicants for the position. And Dr. Guthrie, would you like to share your report?
Good evening, everyone. As I highlighted to the board in my highlights over the weekend, we dealt with a few leaks at the high school over the extended weekend due to the snow, ice, and rain which came from the roof and into parts of the school. 3 classrooms, I believe, were relocated today, but the custodians and maintenance, I have to say, did a phenomenal job of cleanup, and so it did not impact school, thankfully. We are still working on this, but there was not a need for any special communication or change in the schedule as a result. And I thank Dr. Longabuco and the entire team because that was something that was completely unexpected over the break. The principals will be sending out another communication to parents regarding daily COVID cases. Our practice for the last 2 weeks has been, following the holidays, has been to keep everyone updated daily on COVID cases. But now that things are just starting to subside a bit, we want to remind parents to start to utilize the dashboard again, which is on our website, as you know. And it is important, we want everyone to know that the mindset is really that we're looking for a much stronger encouragement to monitor symptoms rather than where the latest case has been. And it has been across, I can tell you, all schools and all classrooms across the district. Again, continue to monitor children for symptoms as this is extremely important. Another point I wanted to bring up is we've had a few questions of parents who might have medical vulnerabilities with respect to COVID and their desire to possibly at times keep their students home, especially as we have peaks from variants. Please reach out to us. We want to discuss this with you. It was also in the communication that was originally sent, and it was in the links from that state communication as well. But again, I know it caused a little bit of confusion. I believe I answered the few questions that I did receive because it is possible if you do have an extenuating circumstance, we want to work with you as a family. And finally, we're looking forward, of course, to presenting our 22-23 budget to you this evening. I know that some of the PTAs have already reached out to schedule my attendance as I go to their future meetings, as I do every year, to discuss the details. So I will be spending the weeks and the months ahead getting out into the community as well as sharing the information through a variety of forms. So thank you.
Are there any questions? So moving on to committee reports. Yes, Mr. Morris.
The Curriculum and Instruction Subcommittee met on Tuesday, January 11th. And we are to share the curriculum development guide with us. She provided an overview of the 5 phases of curriculum development: needs assessment, determination, work curriculum development, curriculum process, implementation, and feedback and evaluation. She also explained that the curriculum provides the foundation of what is taught and that content is approved by the Board of Education. In this regard, it is important for teachers to teach within the bounds of the board-approved curriculum. curriculum ensures that all students have access to the same opportunity to learn regardless of teacher or classroom. It is the primary responsibility of a teacher to implement the written curriculum. It's the principal's responsibility to monitor that implementation. An updated curriculum approval calendar was shared with the three of us, and also presented to us an overview of EduClimber. EduClimber is the district's new data platform that integrates data into usable visualizations. Jen Larkin asked if a timeline could be presented to us regarding the rollout of EduClimber, and Anne will do so and present it at a future meeting along with another video project. And that concludes my CNI.
Thank you. Other committees? Yes, Mr.
So the Communication Subcommittee met on Wednesday, January 13th, and we had a really good meeting, and it was really great to have Dan Cruz on, kind of assist us because he was the chairperson of that committee before I am. And we had a really good discussion about the content of the newsletter, including the next one, which we'd like to have completed by the next board meeting. And that'll include an overview of the budget process, so that readers across the town, can have a very easy global understanding of the budget process, along with curriculum happenings and, various Board of Education happenings, all in an easy to read format, to keep it interesting. And we also bounced around the idea of having Board of Education members. Each one of us is a liaison to a school. And we thought it might be a good idea to think about reaching out for ideas for articles highlighting students and teachers. That's, really a great motivational tool with the board liaisons reaching out to their individual schools. In terms of the newsletter format, we may make a change with that. The format that is existing now is obviously very good. But sometimes it's a good idea to try something a little new. We're thinking about the s'mores format, which Ms. Kuzman, I guess, knows quite a lot about, and that's consistent with the newsletter that's written in, from various PTAs. So again, the graphics and the color and, the attractive feature of a newsletter will make it much more readable. And let's see. We did have a little bit of a discussion on the district website. We agreed it's actually a very attractive website, but it does have some navigation issues. Sometimes a member of the public is not used to it, may have difficulty finding a certain item. So we agreed that it'd be a great idea to have Carmelo Amadio, did I pronounce your name correctly? And Dennis Cola to come to our meeting to, give us some really good feedback on that. And then the last thing we discussed was the calendar. We agreed that it would be a good idea to meet the first Monday of the month, for the year 2022. And that's it.
Thank you very much. Policy?
The policy committee met last Wednesday, January 12th. We went over the COVID-19 vaccination policy, which is back to this meeting for a second read. We also went through the academic freedom policy, which was supposed to come back for a second read this meeting, but we are making some changes. We're replacing the second paragraph in that policy, so it's going to be coming back to the policy committee at our next meeting a week from tomorrow. I'm losing my dates here. Well, anyway. So, was that the 26th? There we go. For one last look before we bring it back to the board for the second read. And we also went through our calendar, which basically our meetings will remain
and Facilities and Finance Committee met last week. Myself, Mr. Ramsey, Ms. Sugowski, Mr. Gerber, Dr. Rodriguez, and Ms. Babbis were in attendance. So the following is an update on the CIP and facilities projects. Completed projects this year include more efficient lighting at Middlegate, fixes to curbs and sidewalks at the middle school, as well as some restroom renovations there. Some renovations to the high school carpet and stair treads were also made. There are some projects left that need to be completed by the end of this year. They include the gym floor at Hedda Meadow, which is expected to start over the summer when school is out. And additional carpeting here at Reed will be updated over the spring break. And the remaining projects, which there's very few of, are on track to be completed by the end of this year. Just a note on the projections, while some projects came in a little higher, like the gym floor at Hedda Meadow, some also came in beneath. So we are still within budget for the year. And these projects are all funded through the town's capital non-reoccurring. Moving over to the finance update from Ms. Babbis. This was our first meeting, so we spent a lot of time going through the details of the financial statements. So thank you, Tanya, for taking the time to walk myself and Mr. Ramsey through that. Some of the highlights and major movers for the report included an increase in out-of-district.
We can talk about the finance and when we review the finance.
You wanted that when we do the, okay, sure, no problem. Okay. So that's for the CIP then?
Very nicely done.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, yes, yes.
So thank you, Ms. Larkin. Are there any liaison activities that have happened recently? Ms. Harrington?
I attended my first advance board meeting and also my new board member orientation. I believe that was last week, but the weeks are kind of all flowing into each other. But it was just a very brief board meeting with introductions of new members from the different districts and just some housekeeping items during the rest of our meeting. So it was great. I look forward to serving with them.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ramsey?
Thank you. Let me just say, first of all, thank you, Jen, for reminding me, but included in our communication subcommittee were me, of course, Dan Cruzon, Janet Kuzma, and Lloyd Rodriguez, so I wanted to get that on the record. And as far as the liaison is concerned, I just want to say I was very pleased to make my first connection with Newtown Middle School. Had a very nice discussion with PTA president and Tom Ihorn, and so that's a really good thing, really good connection. So thank you.
You're welcome. Any other liaison? Donald?
Good evening, everyone. I have some more exciting updates for you. Midterms are starting for the rest of this week and going until Monday of next week. We will have 2 exam periods per day. Safe School Climate sent out a helpful guide to study for midterms and dealing with testing anxiety. The senior class council is gathering new members to help plan the class trip, prom, the dinner dance, and more. Their next meeting for the new semester will be on Monday, January 31st. The Comfort Color Capstone Project is still collecting art supplies donations until February 1st. Capstone Project applications for this semester have been successful and are almost finished. The Italian Club had a meeting last week and discussed different tourist places in Italy. The girls hockey team won their most recent game. Newtown Wrestling won over Fairfield Prep on Saturday. The American Legion Post 202 oratorical contest will be held on January 27th at 5 p.m. at the high school. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
move that the Board of Education approve the financial report and transfers for the month ending December 31st, 2021.
Second.
Oh, so why don't I give some updates here, and then I can turn it over to Tanya, if that's okay?
That sounds wonderful.
Okay, great. As I said, our first meeting went through a lot of the financial statement. Some major movers were the out-of-district tuition account, which has increased as being encumbered an additional $116,000 in unanticipated outplacements for December. Just to note, our special ed contingency account is still intact at $100,000. We also received a transportation credit from All-Star in the amount of $111,000 through December for buses that were not running. And then this credit is included in the transfer request which has been shown in the board packet for placeholder purposes only. And then just a last note, not much other movement in any of the other major objects.
Can I speak to the motion first for the transfer? Okay. So, yeah, as Jen has mentioned, as you all know that our transportation credit came through September to November for $87,000. We approved an additional $24,000, bringing the credit total to $111,000 through December. So I did make a recommendation to the subcommittee that we use the credit in the following purchase. So I recommended the allocation of $49,000 for curriculum contracted services, and this is for our Lexia online learning program. It's a reading program. This program was originally included in our 22-23 budget request, with a portion that was also funded under the ESSER grant. However, the transportation credit has provided us with an opportunity to purchase this program in the current year. Another area where I would like to allocate a portion of the credit is in the maintenance equipment. So the district is in extreme need of a replacement box truck. The current truck was purchased new in 2004, and it's used on a daily basis to distribute cleaning supplies, materials, and also moving furniture from school to school. We average about 9,000 miles per year on this vehicle, and it's requiring constant maintenance. So we also have some safety concerns, and I would like to allocate $45,000 of the transportation credit towards the purchase of the replacement truck. There's also an opportunity to use the credit towards the security equipment. Our S2 car readers are in need of an upgrade in order for them to function properly, costing roughly $10,000. We also have 2 repeaters that are beginning to malfunction as they approach the end of their useful life, and these replacements cost approximately $6,000. So the total of that transfer, a portion of that transfer is $110,000. There's also another request to transfer salaries in the amount of $49,515, and this is for the reallocation of salary accounts in order to accurately reflect our current positions. We are requesting to transfer this amount from the special education para account for positions that have not been filled all year due to a co-teaching model that's now in place at the middle school. This transfer would cover the gap in our tutor account for $24,420, the Holly classroom para for $18,256, and the balance would be used for the shortfall in nursery salaries. So that's all the transfer request.
Can you give us a sum total for the transfer request?
Yes, it is $159,515. This is included in the report.
Discussion, any questions? So, I have one question just to make sure, to also make it public, in that, a lot can happen between now and the end of the year. Are there more special ed, for example,
socially distance, I'm going to take my mask off. Okay, let's get started. Good evening, members of the board and staff and Newtown community. This evening marks the first preview of our 2022-23 operational plan for Newtown Public Schools and the beginning of many discussions about the future needs of our school system. As you know, this has been yet another complex year due to the many challenges we continue to face, like so many other districts, due to the pandemic. But more reason to ensure we have requests that are targeted to support our students, our staff, and all of our families. I want to first take a moment to thank the members of my cabinet, our central office team, who work diligently each year to support the development of our budget, and to our board, all of you, who will be ultimately spending days ahead listening, reviewing, and deliberating on a budget that will then be moved forward to the town. And to our school leaders, all of my outstanding leaders who have had numerous conversations with me about their needs, the areas that have been most impacted over the year, or should I say years, and the resources, staffing, and programs that will provide support for our students. But most importantly, the budget always tells a story about who we are, what we value, and what we need, not only as individuals in this community, in the school system, but as a collective group who have common goals, commitments, and of course priorities. At the foundation or core of who we are as a district, we want to inspire our students to achieve. And as educators, we have an obligation to ensure that all of our learners have the resources, staffing, and supports to excel. So we start with our Newtown mission. Our operational plan development aligns with that mission in our strategic plan, ensuring that we have created an environment that represents high expectations, quality instruction, continuous improvements, and of course, civic responsibility. But our strategic plan also emphasizes the ability for students to be self-directed, to empower them to set their own goals, have voice, demonstrate their understandings and skills like problem solving, critical and creative thinking, collaboration and communication, also to achieve college and career readiness, and become contributing members of the local and global communities. And with a 98% graduation rate and between 85 to 90% of our students attending college over the last several years, this is worthy of our focus and our effort. And as a board, you developed, if you recall, your assumptions and your priorities, all of which are also reflected in the requests that you will hear about tonight. Funding for class size, mental health resources, special education, maintenance, technology, and the support of instructional opportunities and support systems. So as part of our process, when we approach the budget development season, we are mindful of making improvements through what I call a responsible design. Providing enough staff, K-12, to support all of those commitments I just mentioned in our plan and board priorities, as well as district-wide goals. Taking into account our enrollment, class size, balancing the academic and the social emotional needs of our students, being able to access relevant data to help us identify learning gaps in math and literacy and to make improvements, and meaningful professional development to help our teachers in supporting their student learners. And as leaders throughout the year, we take the commitments from the strategic plan and shape our district goals. These are discussed and embedded in our practices and our decisions throughout the year, some of which are continue to develop and implement social emotional learning. That includes the use of a shared language with all of our staff, students, parents, and the community, implementing concept-based curriculum, including aligning our instructional practices and resources, promoting a rigorous learning environment in all classrooms, analyzing and utilizing as I mentioned, assessment data to drive instructional practices and to inform multi-tiered levels of support. Continuing to promote a positive school climate and providing training for all of our staff aimed at maintaining a safe, inclusive, and equitable learning environment for all of our students. The goal of social emotional learning strategies and practices includes many areas that are grant funded and others that already exist in our budget that were carried over. That again, as I break the district goals down, I want you to see how this, what it looks like in the budget. Our coordinator for health and wellness, our middle and high school teen talk counselors, our Hope Squad advisors and curriculum at the middle school and high school, our check-in mental health and wellness fair at the high school, social workers, counselors, social workers at Reed and the high school, our family assistance coordinator for the district. We also have programs that are already in place and utilized. Responsive Classroom, Second Step, and Project Adventure. Our Signs of Suicide program, middle school and high school. And of course, our PEAC, our Parent Educator Advisory Council, which brought us anonymous alerts, at least expanded through all of the classrooms in all of our schools, after-school programming, and our new Blackboard communication tool as well. I wanted to share this, our SEL framework, which is by Castle. It guides our work throughout the district and is a network of free resources, but it also provides a strong foundation for all of us. SEL is important, as you know, as we look ahead in supporting all of our students, which goes hand in hand with reducing real concerns and risks for student disengagement, emotional stress, anxiety, and failure. Another goal, our district leadership goal, focuses on curriculum and instruction through concept-based practices and resources. What you will find in the budget here is curriculum revision for social studies 3 through 8, various high school course revisions, K through 2 reading revisions, grade 5, 6 science, the finalization of Project Adventure and kitchen science curriculum at the middle school, just to name some. We also brought, as you know, the K-5 Bridges Math to the district after a thorough and thoughtful pilot and teacher training that goes along with that. We will be funding math interventionists at the elementary level and will be in year 2 of a 3-year implementation phase for a new 6 through 8 grade math program. Along with the use of digital resources that are used within and outside the classrooms to enrich instruction, such as Learning A to Z, Nucella, and BrainClap. You will find ELL training and resources, such as Achieve 3000, and again, Learning A to Z, the ELL edition as well. This also includes math and literacy tutoring at the elementary level. Another commitment we have made is to continue to improve our ability to analyze and utilize assessment data to drive instructional practices and to inform multi-tiered levels of support. This includes, as you mentioned earlier, EduClimber, an interactive platform integrating student data for analysis and building and having built-in tools for intervention tracking and progress monitoring. This will greatly increase the capacity for staff and leaders to make better decisions about the specific needs of our students. And of course, we would use both in-house and standardized data. Our Dibble's reading assessment, this is a universal K-3 screener that identifies students at risk for dyslexia. And Foundations, the consumable resources portion of our existing program. As I know, we've spoken about this program before. It's a Wilson-based program that is already in place, supports all of our students, but particularly those who struggle with reading. An important note here, this investment was made to support a stronger literacy foundation, but also it was a direct result of the special education action steps that we created a few years ago, and we made reports on this to the Board of Education. We also include our PSAT and ACT, and as you know, while SAT is covered by College Board as our state standardized exam for our high school juniors, the PSAT and ACT do require funding. We also want to promote, as one of our goals, a positive school climate in alignment with our core values. And while this can be found throughout the budget in many areas, there are some areas where this is evident, and you will see it in Parent Educator Advisory Committee. This is compensating our staff for their participation as well as any resources that we employ. Our after-school programming, cross-grade level meetings at the elementary level, ongoing extracurricular activities, athletics, and our continuing education program, which is summer school and includes summer enrichment as well. And finally, providing training and tools for our staff in an effort to maintain a safe, inclusive, and equitable learning environment. This includes Safe Schools training platform for all of our staff. You will find that in the budget. Our SSO recertification training and licensure fees. As I mentioned, Blackboard, our communication tool for the school community. Anonymous alerts, which has been expanded to all schools. Our coordinator of diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is grant funded. Our coordinator of health and wellness, which we are bringing back and we are reorganizing with grant support internally. Professional development for staff, and this also includes new staff orientation and teacher education and mentoring, which is our team program. But I also want to add that this is so much more than staffing and training or even oversight. We have a variety of existing programs, such as Second Step, Project Empower, all of our advisories, after-school clubs, and community partnerships, and other vehicles to ensure that we have a positive environment for all of our students. So now let's take a closer look at the process, our revenue sources, and key drivers that make up our budget. So our process begins with the administrators and their staff requests. It moves obviously to the superintendent for review and a final proposal like tonight to the Board of Education. Following your deliberations, the budget with adjustments moves on to the town. This year, the initial requests started at 5.53% increase from our current budget, or $84,107,395, which was reduced by 1.18%, or $946,319. This resulted in a final proposal to you this evening of $83,161,076, or of 4.35% over this current year. We also have multiple revenue sources, and I know I've spoken about this each year, just so you get an opportunity to understand that, including the grants that provide offsets to our budget. As you know, the majority of our budget is supported through our tax base, our tax revenue, amounting to $78,574,045, or just under 95% of our total budget. Education cost sharing from the state is given to the town, as you know, and they disperse their funds to us. And next year, that would be the same as it was this year, of $4,495,691, or 5.4%. And this is because the state works on a 2-year budget, and this is the second year of that budget cycle. That would be the second year of the budget cycle. The excess cost grant, which is a special education revenue offset, can only be used for special education costs. Roughly 20% of this grant is allocated toward out-of-district transportation, while the remainder is allocated for out-of-district tuition. So just so you understand, and we've used this before, I think it's a really good example of how the excess cost grant eligibility is calculated. So here's an example of a student's cost in order to meet eligibility. Again, these are for out-of-district tuition costs. If a student's tuition, for example, is $100,000 and transportation is $40,000, then the total eligible cost would be $140,000. The basic contribution is calculated by multiplying our prior year's net cost per pupil expenditure, and this would be $19,919 times 4.5, which gives you $89,636. So this is the actual threshold figure that must be met in order to qualify for eligible funding for that particular student. This number is then deducted from the cost for that student of $140,000, which leaves us with an eligible cost of $50,364. We are reimbursed at a rate of approximately 75% for our final reimbursement of $37,773 to help offset that cost. So Newtown would be responsible for funding $102,227 for that student. It's important that you understand this as we talk about out-of-district costs, especially in special education. So this slide actually depicts the anticipated amount of excess cost grant funding that will offset the out-of-district tuition. So out-of-district tuition includes the costs of student placements in selected out-of-district settings for special education services. This chart does not include transportation, just so you know that. So next year, the anticipated out-of-district tuition cost will be $4,614,801, with a revenue offset from the grant of $1,300,484, and a net tuition cost for us of $3,314,317. If you look on page 171 of your budget book, it shows the out-of-district costs of transportation and the allocated percent of excess cost grant that offsets that as well, just so you know where to find these in your book. I also think it's important to break down the budget by object, or what we call categories of expenditures. This includes salaries at $53,986,471. Benefits are just under $12 million. $736,600 for purchased professional services, $2,331,663 for purchased property, other purchased services at just a little over $10 million, and supplies at $3,372,664. With the remainder of property and equipment, other objects, and our special education contingency fund, all of which equal the total budget of $83,161,076. This slide gives you a clear picture of the dollars and percent changes by each object over the prior year's budget, which equates to an increase of $3,463,378. And then following that is a graphic of these major object changes. As always, salaries are a major contributing factor. Our salaries, as you know, are bound by contractual obligations and educational needs. Staffing positions coming off of grants are also another driver for these increases, as well as increases in areas that were supported by the town for this current budget, but of course naturally would impact next year's budget. Purchased property and other purchased services, for example, these were paid for by the town. But you will see that as we continue and how that impacts this. Let's move on to salaries and benefits. Again, as always, significant drivers of the budget. Teachers will receive a 1.7% increase for top step and others for step increase. Administrators will receive 2%, custodians at 2.25%, secretaries will receive 2.25%, nurses at 2% for top step, all others receiving a 1.5 with step movement. We are about to begin para-educators negotiations this year. Salaries then make up 52, just a little over 52% of the requested budget increase for next year. And in benefits, medical and dental make up just over 73% of the benefit budget, and the expected increase in this area is 3.11%. FICA and Medicare make up a little over 14% of the benefit budget, and the expected increase in this area is just under 4% at 3.96. Pensions are expected to slightly decrease based on projections, and then other accounts include premiums and fees, life insurance, tuition reimbursement, unemployment, workers' compensation, and our employee assistance program. And so the total benefits make up 8.37% of the requested budget increase. Now I'd like to take a look at staffing additions and reductions, as this is something we review, as you know, each year and make deliberate decisions based on enrollment and, of course, more importantly, on student needs. For next year, we are requesting additions to our staff at the elementary level. At Holly, a first grade teacher, a 0.25 world language teacher, but the same world language request at Hedda Meadow. So we will hire a part-time to be shared. Also a 0.25 PE teacher, again to be shared, and a 0.5 math intervention teacher. At Sandy Hook, one kindergarten teacher and one first grade teacher. At Middlegate, a second grade teacher and a 0.5 math interventionist. At Hedda Meadow, requests are for one kindergarten teacher, 0.25 world language, a 0.25 PE, and a 0.5 math interventionist. So just a quick note, the 0.5 interventionists are being added along with existing 0.5 interventionists at each school that were already funded through the ESSER grant, so that each elementary will have a 1.0 FTE intervention teacher in math. If you look at page 194 of your budget book, you will find a summary of all of our grant-funded positions. I wanted to note those staffing positions coming off of grants that are being brought over to the operational budget. So we have a 0.93 behavior interventionist at Hedda Meadow, an additional ELL teacher, a speech and language, special education staff at Middlegate, and 2 middle school special education teachers, as well as a special education health teacher for the SAIL program. We also have reductions, just as we have additions based on either enrollment or the lack of need based on programmatic changes. At the high school, a reduction of 1.0 FTE in science and a 0.4 FTE reduction in social studies. In our non-certified, at the middle school, a reduction of a 0.43 classroom para and 2.47 sped paras. These were unfilled positions currently, but also the inclusion of a co-teaching model didn't require the same number of para-position supports, as the SPED teacher works directly in the classroom with the regular education teacher in this case. So overall, with both additions and reductions, we are requesting a total of 9.38 staff, or an increase of $683,094 to the budget to appropriately meet students' academic and social emotional needs for the upcoming year. I want to talk about other drivers as well. So we're going to move on, and I know there will be questions certainly on all of this, but I want to move us on to other purchase services. Here's another driver in our budget. In other purchase services, the major drivers include transportation and contracted services, and expected to increase by $627,640, making up about 18% of our budget increase. In transportation, the anticipated increase comes about as we are at the end of a 5-year contract with our current provider. And as you know, due to the national issue of bus driver shortages and what we're seeing out there in bids in across the state, we have included an 8% increase in this area. In contracted services, these increases account for general supports, the inclusion of a new paperless timekeeping system, the expansion, as I mentioned, of anonymous alerts to be expanded at all schools, and a nominal increase to account for changes in our food services contract, as we also will be going out to bid this year. In technology, we've included Cisco phone upgrades, Blackboard communication to replace School Messenger, network and data security testing, and contractual inflation rates as well. And in curriculum, there are requests for programs that were previously grant funded, things like IXL and Newsella, plus Learning A to Z, as I mentioned earlier. This visual actually shows our transportation costs over time and anticipated for the next year with the additional 8%, as I mentioned. But one caution when you look at the predicted 2022-23 budget, aside for the bids that are not in yet, there are other moving pieces, many moving pieces in this number, such as reduction in magnet school grant, pre-K, private school transportation, as well as what we call ad hoc runs. And these are additional runs that we can be charged beyond the typical transportation contract. Moving on to purchase property services, again, another significant driver. This makes up approximately 13.97% of the budget and is expected to increase by $483,985. As I mentioned in a previous slide, the town has been funding these increases over the past 2 years, which is extremely helpful. However, understand that it does create an increase in our budget, our operational plan in the following year. The request of $472,000 for building projects is certainly reasonable, as these are for the repair and maintenance required to maintain all of our buildings across the district. If you look on pages 162 and 163 of your budget book, you will see a historical display of all of these costs, along with a 5-year plan outlining all of the projects that are expected. Again, another area that was funded by the town last year, creating a budget increase for next year, is property and equipment, which is largely technology, such as Chromebooks, laptops. Our current budget was decreased at that time by $179,491 and funded by the town's capital non-recurring account. This you will find on page 150 in your budget book. You can see the chart, which displays a historical look at our expenditures over time. As you know, one of our commitments is for one-to-one devices for all of our students, and we are continuing to meet that goal. A request is also included in this, property and equipment for cafe tables at the middle school, currently older and not sturdy, and also by purchasing desks and chairs at middle school based on new classrooms being set up there. Moving along, here's a visual of all those same major objects and the percentages that make up our increase. You can see, again, the real drivers here are found in salaries, purchase property services, and other purchase services. We have spoken to the town, as I mentioned, and would welcome additional conversations about funding some capital projects as they have done previously, but that discussion, again, will happen on their end. I always want to take the time to emphasize that we have made, we believe, some very smart decisions over the years, including our self-funded insurance, having kept a reasonable balance in our medical fund, keeping the costs down. We also have maintained a level of stability affordability, I believe, with the use of competitive third-party pricing for both electricity and through what we call our virtual net metering program, and this runs in 6 of our 7 schools. Our facilities are equally important, and we continue to evaluate our needs and priorities, ensure we have plans to replace things like lighting fixtures, boilers, switches, and other mechanicals that help control and, of course, reduce the cost of energy. And finally, we've made commitments in technology. During the pandemic, this commitment, as you know, propelled us to intensify our evaluation of needs, including what we needed in devices, communication tools, and all of our digital resources, and investing in an interactive platform, as we mentioned, EduClimber, will benefit our students and our staff, as staff get to track interventions and monitor the progress of our students in the future. So now let's take a quick look at student enrollment each year. As is typical, we consider our student enrollment and class size as we develop our budget. This has been the focus of many discussions over the years and prompted ongoing evaluation of future and overall numbers that would impact our decisions down the road. But class size based on enrollment, as you know, has been very challenging during the pandemic, especially considering the implementation of social distancing, students who were disenrolled at the time. But as we look ahead, we want to maintain reasonable class sizes even into next year so that staff can appropriately meet the academic and social emotional needs of their students. So we used our internal projections in our review of enrollment, but we have always also considered the projections from consultants, as you know, who have included long-term predictions, including Peter Prouda, which is also in your budget book on pages 31 to 33. Our predicted enrollment for the 22-23 school year was based on those central office projections, which totals 4,025 students. Our pre-K is projected to increase by 84 students, and our middle school is predicted to increase by 18 students, while Reed decreases slightly by 10, and the high school decreases by 67. Now with that same enrollment in mind, a few important points to make. The first is that we want to maintain, as I mentioned, reasonable and appropriate class sizes, especially as we are going to need to address learning gaps and other student needs, but also understand that we have guidelines, and while we have guidelines, these have to be applied not just based on numbers, but regarding student needs. And every school is unique in that way. For example, I have supported additional staff even when it means those classes are below guidelines due to the number of student needs in a particular class moving forward. And perhaps coming closer to the higher side, sometimes even going over a bit of that guideline, also makes sense. We consider so many variables here. You will find more about class size in each of the school paths as you go through and speak with principals as well. Moving on, as you know, SPED enrollment continues to rise, and we are not alone here in Newtown with that. That's a fact. And currently, we are just about where the state is, that we are close to 16% of our students now receiving special education services. We have 659 total students, and this has grown just since the January enrollment, which you can also find on page 127 in your budget book. This is a hot topic, I will tell you, even outside of Newtown, as it became the focal point of a conversation among superintendents and legislators at a breakfast recently here in Newtown not too long ago, along with the ongoing push to get the state to fund SPED more reasonably and equitably, and that takes you back to the previous slide of thinking about how they calculate excess cost grant. With all of that, I wanted you to have a very full and clear picture of the requests that we have that I feel are truly connected to students teaching and learning, both regular and special education, technology, continuing education, all of this equate to 65% of our budget with the remainder focused on our obligations and benefits, transportation, general services, and plant and maintenance. All important too. You also heard me mention net per pupil expenditures when we talked about special education, but this applies to where we are when we look at our DIRB B. Other districts like us that are socioeconomically similar, we are just above the middle in that DIRB. The DIRB comparison, however, does not mean that all towns are alike, which is why the state typically now frowns on comparisons. We don't compare, for example, staff turnover, new programming, changes in curricula, staffing supports, and all of these make a huge difference. But we do get compared at times in various media based on lots of indicators, which has been generally reported using district data. I'll give you an example, U.S. News and World Report. Our high school is number 21 in the top 10% out of 212 schools in the state. Our middle school is 39, top 13% in the state out of 304 middle schools. And our elementary, this is a new ranking, is also ranked, and as they have begun to look at rankings there. And they use lots of data that come from all districts. So we're pretty proud of that. Our students are graduating and attending excellent colleges. Our alum have regularly come back to share anecdotally that they have a strong foundation here in Newtown. But that does not mean that we don't need to continue to look at those areas where greater support is necessary. Adjustments, for example, in instruction and changes in programming that will put us at the top. And that's where we belong. And just to bring this to a close, our efforts are for the academic and social emotional welfare of our students. That's what next year's budget is really all about. More important now, following a global pandemic. More important now, as we consider the academic learning gaps for our students. More important now, as we want to address stress, anxiety, disengagement from school, and other serious emotional influences that impact learning, not only next year, but beyond. In order to accomplish our goals, it encompasses the collaborative efforts of a thoughtful design, as I mentioned earlier, the oversight of health and wellness, inclusionary and equitable practices, technology and digital resources, and the clear commitment and consistent practices across all grade levels and all of our schools. It requires the partnership with families and community service organizations, committee work of peak, before and after school tutoring, interventionists, and the ongoing curricular and instructional changes that continue with the oversight of our staff committees, as well as professional development and training of all of our staff. The inclusion of platforms like EduClimber to support the use of data-driven decision-making, and a host of instructional resources and staffing supports that will continue to ensure our students are finding ways not only to achieve, but to excel. Thank you.
Thank you.
We also have, as you know, thank you, Thomas, for playing Vanna. We also have our elementary principals this evening, and our principal of Reed, and the principal of the middle school to come up and again augment and enrich a lot of my presentation and to add more detail and more clarity around that. If you have a general question, I'll certainly answer it.
First, I'd like to say that was an excellent and comprehensive overview, so thank you very, very much. Are there any questions at this time? I think we're ready to move right on to the elementary principals.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. We appreciate the opportunity to sit before you and share and discuss our budget. Before we begin with questions, we want to just share with you that although each one of our schools is unique and has individual successes and challenges, we work very collaboratively and we value that to ensure that every elementary student in Newtown has a shared experience. So before we answer any questions that you might have, what we'd like to do at this time is just take a moment and share how together our budgets help fulfill the mission of the district's priorities and the leadership goals that Dr. Rodriguez outlined. And they are social and emotional learning, rigorous learning, utilizing assessment data, and a positive school climate. So each one of us will go through each one of those categories. And the first priority is social emotional learning, and that would be Dr. Gomes.
Hi, good evening, welcome. I just wanted to say hello, it's nice to meet you. I haven't met Mr. Ramsey or Ms. Kuzma or Ms. Larkin, so thank you for being here, thank you for giving us your time. My name is Kathy Gambos, and I'm principal at Sandy Hook. I have been at Sandy Hook for 9 school years. Seems it went quite fast. The priority that I'm going to speak to tonight is the social emotional learning. Dr. Rodriguez covered much of the specifics that we do in our elementary schools. Like the other schools in Newtown, we're based in Castle, which I'm sure you know are the competencies that are defined that will make students successful, make them successful as far as academics, as far as being good citizens, as far as really just being good people who can make reasonable and responsible decisions. We, at the elementary school, we have direct instruction in our second step program. The objectives of our SEL program are to understand and manage, have students understand and manage their emotions, set and achieve reasonable goals, feel and show empathy, which is a very, probably the most important skill human beings can have. Demonstrate positive feelings about their identity and the identity of others. Establish and maintain positive relationships. Make reasonable decisions, and one of the things that we really begin to focus on very young is advocating for themselves and for others in a positive way. We've also run responsive classrooms, and that is a philosophy which is around building community. It is a discipline philosophy where we teach children to want to be responsible for themselves and to be part of the community. We have, over the past few years, well, the pandemic, so it feels like yesterday, right, 3 years ago, but we did do a push and have trained all except our new teachers this year, which will be trained. So all of our teachers have been formally trained in responsive classroom. We also this year instituted universal bullying lessons to prevent bullying. And so I worked with a group of guidance counselors in the summer, and we wrote a lesson for K-4 that we know every classroom teacher presented in September, and then we will also be asking them to present it this winter as a reminder. We also instituted the anonymous alerts at the elementary school. We've been fortunate in the sense that we have not gotten lots of anonymous alerts at our age. The last one I got said he pushed someone off the slide. I don't know who he is, I don't know when, I don't know where. So we emailed the student back and kindly asked them to see one of us. That's a really, I sent that to Dr. Lolabuco, saying, wouldn't you wish this was your anonymous alert? And so we also have worked really hard to have our guidance counselors be universal in their developmental guidance curriculum. I also worked with them this summer on some of that. And what we've done is they do monthly lessons by grade level. They also do lunch bunches and see kids individually. In the past few years, we've all instituted behavior interventionists, paraprofessionals, who are part of our behavior plans for kids that need regulating walks or regulating mindfulness activities, but they're also teaching mindfulness in each of our classrooms. So that is the basis of our SEL program. The pandemic has really, like everything else, has really made us sit back and really focus on making sure we're doing it with fidelity all over the district, because we know the stress that the pandemic has put on kids and adults, we can't underestimate. Mr. Geisler, Middlegate School.
That was my opening line, thank you. I would like to welcome new board members and thank the board as a whole for all the work you do on behalf of the school community. I will be talking about rigorous learning, and you do have an insert in your packet. I just want to point out some key highlights that the Newtown Public Schools, our staff, have a history of providing rigorous learning opportunities. Our district focuses on student engagement and differentiating to meet the needs of all learners. Recent ongoing curricular revisions allow us to ensure that they are written in a concept-based format and in alignment with grade level standards. Our new math program, which I read earlier, Bridges, uses direct instruction, structured investigations, and open exploration, in addition to a number of instructional resources to enhance student learning and engagement. iReady is an online tool that went into effect this year, which has engaging and standard-based activities, which allow students to progress toward their learning goals in mathematics and in reading. The district also utilizes other online resources, such as Lexia, to engage students and focus on their individual needs. Finally, staff collaboration provides students with challenging and engaging learning opportunities each day. I would now like to pass it back to Mr. Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Geisler. I did forget to introduce myself. So I'm Chris Moretti, school principal at Pauley. I got to meet everybody at the previous meeting with our relocation. So again, congratulations and welcome to everybody. The district priority and the leadership goal that I'll be speaking to and how we all work collaboratively and how it's reflected in our budgets is the analysis and the utilization of assessment data. So schools are using data for goal setting for teachers and for students. We're measuring student performance on an ongoing regular basis. We're targeting instruction and we're targeting our intervention. We're reviewing all assessment data on multiple levels. We look at it as individual students, classrooms, grade levels, and our entire school as well. We have core teams, all of us, made up of ourselves, as well as our lead teachers, our language arts consultants, our math science specialists, and our school counselors. And we routinely review all assessment data periodically given throughout the year. And we look at anybody who shows there could be an issue through the data, and we ask each other, have we had conversations about this student? Are they on somebody's radar? If we find that they've not come up in conversation, we reach out to the teachers to find out what's happening in the classroom and to make sure that somehow every child that shows up is being discussed somewhere. Most of the discussions occur at our PLCs or at our SRBI meetings. The SRBI meetings are discussing how to use the data to form targeted interventions to help the students become successful and to address their deficits. Through that process, we are progress monitoring to make sure the students are advancing. We're using that data to celebrate advancement, but we're also using it that if the interventions are not successful, do we have to try other interventions, or do we need to move the child to a different tier of support within SRBI? EduClimber is the place where we house all of the student data, as well as where we have the notes from our meetings, and we set goals for students to progress monitor how they're doing. Assessments take a wide variety of appearances at the elementary level. They're everything from student work to end of the unit assessments through foundations or bridges. They are writing prompts, observations, teachers' anecdotal notes, and the three new platforms that we're utilizing this year, Fontes and Pinnell, is an assessment tool to help us look at reading comprehension. We are also using the iReady program that Mr. Geisler mentioned, an adaptive program to help us with it's a diagnostic tool for reading and in math. And we're also using a new version of Dibble, which helps us with the foundations of literacy. We then do this on an individual level. We then get together at our PLC and we discuss each school with all of the other principals hey, how are you doing? You're doing well. What am I not doing? How can we help each other? We're having those conversations. And then we also have the conversations along with the Director of Teaching and Learning and the Assistant Superintendent of Schools. And all of that is focusing on implementation of our concepts-based curriculum, focusing on rigorous instruction and targeted intervention, student depth of knowledge, rigor of lessons, student engagement, and the shift to a student-centered, collaborative environment. So that's my priority and goal that we've all been focusing on, and Mr. Napolitano brings us home with school climate.
Thank you. Thank you for having us tonight. I'm Tim Napolitano. I'm the principal at Head Meadow. I'm going to be talking about sustaining and strengthening a positive school climate. This is a priority and a goal for us in our district, and building connections is really one of the most important things we can be doing within our schools. The challenges of the pandemic have also been an opportunity for us because it's allowed teachers to be creative and thoughtful in how we connect. And although it's not been ideal and not perfect, they've done a wonderful and amazing job keeping students and families feeling connected to our schools. Working with families is a priority, and also we're connecting our PTAs and having our PTAs help plan for and create opportunities to connect within the school and beyond the school day have been really important. It's been vital to help for some fun activities beyond our school days. We also have our Building Safe School Climate Committees, which align with our District Safe School Climate Committee, and we work to have opportunities to bring fun and joy to our school buildings to help improve the school climate for all. And of course, building positive relationships is what makes a school building for all members of our school community. And so we continue to have work with our counselors and all of our staff to help continue to build those positive relationships. Speaking of our counselors, as Dr. Gomes was talking about too, they're vital for what we're doing. We're teaching mindfulness lessons to students to help them learn the skills to be self-aware of their thoughts and emotions and actions through these mindfulness lessons. We're thankful for them. We're thankful for all our staffs and our families and the students we work with. We appreciate our Board of Education support of our work and our central office staff, Dr. Rodriguez. We know what responsibility this is, and we're all working together as a team. That's what we are. Our positive school climate. We are a team working together for our students, and we're lucky to be part of such a wonderful district. And we're really looking forward to continuing to provide fun, positive opportunities for children and to bring joy to the classrooms. And we appreciate it. Thank you. The next part is if you have any questions, we are here for you to answer any of the questions that you have.
Mr. Ramsey?
Well, thank you very much for that presentation. I really have a special reverence for elementary school teachers for both personal and professional reasons. They do a lot. And I also have a tremendous respect for the need of social emotional learning, especially in these times. I'm just wondering, have you received or do you elicit feedback from your teachers in terms of how they feel about administering the social emotional learning and whether they feel it's been effective thus far?
You have one. Yeah.
So, yes, we do talk to our staff all the time. We do teach the second step lessons, and we do get their feedback on those. We've moved to the digital lessons, and so that's been new this year, so they've been working on that. So I think as we're going through, we're working with them, and our counselors are working with them as well to get feedback on the lessons we're teaching them and anything else with our social emotional curriculum.
Piggyback on that, I know that the Director of Teaching and Learning facilitates cross-grade level conversations where they'll take representatives from a K, a 1, a 2, and a 3, and a 4 from every one of our schools, and they get together and they have a plethora of conversations on different topics, and I know that the teaching of the second step curriculum, Mr. Ramsey certainly is one of those topics they discuss in those meetings.
I also just want to mention that when we talk about the SRBI process, it's not just for reading and math. It's also for students who are exhibiting emotional difficulties or behavioral difficulties. So we actually bring students forward that we're concerned about, and we develop plans, intervention plans that include our guidance counselor or programs, or sometimes it might even be a referral to an outside agency. So it's important to know that as we're doing data teams for math and reading, we're also doing it for behavior and social emotional concerns on individual kids.
Next question. Another question? Mr. Poussin?
You can hand the mic to Mr. Geisler.
Nice.
I'm gonna put him on hot spot.
I was almost going to grab it before I didn't speak, so you might as well come to me.
Getting a little more nitty gritty, it looks like Oxford is the place to raise a family at the moment. You've got quite a jump, it looks like, projected for next year.
Correct.
But I noticed for fourth grade, this year and next year, you're projecting the same number of students, but you're reducing the teacher. So you're going from 4 sections of fourth grade with a total of 74 to 3 sections of fourth grade with a total of 74, which just about maxes out, hits the guidelines on them. So why?
Great question, and I anticipated that would come. As we built our budget and had our discussions in October and then discussions with our central office staff in November, our internal number was actually at 71, which was below the guidelines. So having gone through the process, we insert the guideline figure, which would have us at a reduction. However, there's always ongoing dialogue between building principals and central office. If the projection is right, if we go over that amount, Dr. Rodriguez and I have had conversations each of the last 3 years on that. And after reviewing registration at the first time of the year, there have been times where Dr. Rodriguez has either maintained or added a classroom teacher. But simply put, at the time that we were doing this exercise, we were below the guidelines for fourth grade.
Okay, so you chose the number of sections and then this number took a small tick up, is that? Okay.
And right now we are at 72, so there's been an increase of 1 since we put this budget together. It is not even at 74, but that is the case.
Okay, I always get nervous when I see us say we're looking at being maxed out, so we don't have a lot of wiggle room. I know that there's always the ongoing dialogues between principals and the superintendent, but it still always makes me nervous, and I end up picking on someone every year.
That's okay. We could somehow often have a bubble at Middlegate, and I would understand the nervousness if I had not had these past experiences, supportive superintendents and supportive board, in the past. There might be a different conversation, but I do know, as I said, 3 times, just in the last couple of years, including this current year, my 3rd grade, we had those conversations, not just based on numbers, but also on the needs of the students in those grade levels. So I do know that the conversation would continue, and that if we did need it, that we would have that put back in place.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I noticed you have like 31 and up to 31 students, which is 3 times any other elementary.
It's interestingly looking at it today, it's an increase of that, but if you look at the projection from 2 years ago, 371, or internal 373, it's an increase of 47 students.
Yeah.
So it is on the update.
Dr. Robbie?
Yeah, I was just going to add to flip that around and always look at the other side, because we have guidelines for a reason. Doesn't even mean we can't go one over. We just have to be realistic about that, because when you put one in other cases where we've added one or wanted to insert one, it brings you down to a kindergarten number. So we just have to be reasonable and think about, and we're always having those conversations. What is the makeup of the classroom moving in? Do we lose more in 4th grade? Do we gain more usually? What's been the history? Kindergarten, it's usually different than, say, a 3rd or 4th grade. But as they get older, moving to the 4th grade, 3rd grade, 4th grade, the guidelines go up. So we just have to be cognizant of that.
Ms. Larkin? First, are there any follow-up questions to this? Ms. Larkin, I
I'm a middle-aged mom, as Mr. Geisler knows, so 2 questions, well, 1 comment and 1 question. So I feel, if I can just personally, we've been in that situation where we got the call 2 days before, like, we're getting a new teacher for your child's classroom, and Mr. Geisler has always handled it, well, it's only happened to us once, but like wonderfully, and it was like, it's a very cool surprise, and to this day, it's been one of my son's favorite teachers, so it was a pleasant surprise. But also being a middle-aged mom, do you have another classroom there? I'm just trying to like think where you would have that classroom.
We are looking at spacing.
The outdoor one?
We are looking at spacing. We are getting tight in order to do a lot of the programs that we would like to do. We do have a dedicated mindfulness room, for example. We have a reading center that we use to house those that would just kind of overwhelm classroom libraries. So we have spaces that might be ideal for a classroom, but less than ideal for where those programs of mindfulness or resources and literature where they can shift and move to. So we do have classroom spaces available that are being utilized for different purposes this year. So we would have to think about where those items went, should these projections come true and meet perception. I could be, actually, the example I can give from last year when we had a first grade, I wanted to house them in the back of the first grade. So a 2nd grade teacher retired. Luckily, the new teacher, I had to move into a different hallway, which was an old computer lab at the point. Last year, the mindfulness, so I had to move her into there so she could be around colleagues and support staff, and mindfulness went to another room. So that's just kind of moving that out, so I will have a classroom space. It's just to really do some of the other programs that we want to do, where are those?
Ms. Herman, that was my question. Because I'm a former middle-aged mom, and there was some spaces back then, but I know it's starting to get tighter there, and I noticed there was money in the budget for additional desks, correct? Or that was our budget. We discussed that, but I was just wondering if there was any additional support that you wanted, furniture-wise or anything like that, to accommodate the increase in.
Some of that is in the facilities, like we talked about desks and chairs. We are looking at other things that have to come along with that, teacher furniture,
Right.
Building classroom libraries, which in my line item looks at textbooks is increasing, but part of that is possibly 2 new sections, kindergarten and 2nd grade, of classroom libraries, the resources that go with that, the bridges and foundations kits. So that's part of some of the other increases that you might find there. So it is accounted for at times in different parts of the budget, but they are accounted for in this proposed budget. And interestingly, we're going back to some of the numbers that we had when I started, which I believe is either 475 or 480 students. So we have this space, it's just kind of moving out and either adjusting or maybe giving us some things that we've going on in the future. Thank you.
Any other follow-up questions? Okay, I have one I think is related. I think this is probably go for Tanya. I'd like to talk about the orange highlighted places on number 44. So essentially, we've got a kindergarten that we think is underestimated in terms of the population. And we have the star, I think, means an extra teacher, right?
Yes, like that. So what we did this last year also, after we started talking about projections, that in Meadow kindergarten, we felt that number was a little bit low. We went with the central office projections just to be consistent. But his max would be 54 students before we would have to add a section or a classroom teacher. So that's what the little asterisk is, and we give all that to the kindergarten.
What about the one with the 70?
And the same thing goes for Sandy Hook. So he's currently at 75 students for 3rd grade and Sandy Hook.
Yes.
Yeah, so again, rolling that forward, I mean, right now she's just about at max. 3 teachers. So we went ahead, we left the central office projections, but we did add an extra classroom.
Okay, so that change should be 1 and not 0 there.
It's actually 4, right? And it would have been reduced by 1. So we took off the reduction of 1 teacher and a teacher. So the net is.
Yeah, 2 new sections.
Oh.
I'm slated for kindergarten and second.
Okay,
So
okay.
that's the net addition.
I get that. So essentially we've got two teachers that are likely, but not necessarily that we then have on to be able to handle something that might happen with education.
just gonna bring that up, and that's how we make those decisions. A lot of times we look at, you know, we've added a section, but we're not really sure it will be needed, and then we're able to use it somewhere else. So that's part of the decision-making of all of this as well.
Thank you very much. Any other questions on this topic? Okay, questions other? You have to go again, Mr. Barrow, if you'd like.
I have two comments. One is there's enough, got enough money, Chris, to move all your children to where they need to be moved. So we don't have to worry about anything. All right.
That's not in, a lot of that is not in my personal quality budget, but it's in the facility budget, and I'm having ongoing conversations with Bob River and Dr. Rodriguez about that.
Okay. And then the other thing is it's comprehensive. The para-educator concern that we have in this district about not having enough. So please let us know what we can do to rectify that. And I have a few ideas, but I think Dr. Bombos has a lot of good ideas because she doesn't appear to have that big concern with the building. And I know the rest of you have a lack of paraeducators that you need, and so let us help you in any way that we can. Mr. Ramsey and I can stand up 3 corners and try to get people to come or whatever.
Well, just to comment on that, A, you have to thoroughly vet the staff we have because they are pitching in everywhere and helping us plug holes. When you speak of needing staff, it's not from a lack of support from central office or the budget or the board. It really is there's been no applicants. So for all those watching at home, I think we all have postings and we welcome applicants to those positions. But we've covered what we needed to cover. It's very tight, just like we're covering with substitutes and building subs and pulling people in. And we've often been in classrooms ourselves, covering and teaching and subbing. And so we're definitely making sure we're doing what we need to do. But really, people applying at the moment seems to be the biggest hardship for us.
I'll follow up on that. I think, Lori, you had mentioned building sub positions that you have put in. Would you mind explaining to the new members here how effective that is?
So I think it was the first hurricane or the second one that we got it. Yes. We made a concerted effort to add more building level subs rather than the daily subs because they were more consistent and we could count on them. And so we did that, and I think we added more actually we continue that next year, into next year as well. And that has helped tremendously. Again, what you're hearing about the paras is similar to what's happening with getting substitutes. So that is, I mean, it's a staffing issue all the way across the board. But when we do have more, and we did have more building subs than we did before, that has helped tremendously because they can take on classes. With the daily sub, they might not be able to show up on certain days, or they have a certain schedule. So that is a little bit less reliable than it is with the building sub. So I personally, and I talked to all the principals, improved that, I think, early on, and we've continued that. So was that your question, Mr. Morris?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Larkin?
This is more of a curiosity question, and I think it's for you, Dr. Ramos. And I know it's nearly a rounding error when we talk about budget, so it's not a financial question. But I noticed that you are looking to project twice as much spending in staff training as the other 3 elementary schools. What are you doing?
What am I doing? Yeah, so there's a couple of things that we're going to try and do next year. I'm going to anticipate new teachers, so we have some responsive classroom training, which is Ann does in her budget, but also we're going to do some after-school stuff with some of our teachers. I also put in there for some of my teachers to access webinars, and we've had 2 years of no outside professional development. And so we've done a push for our, we have a group of teachers that are doing recon. So when my language arts specialist and my math specialist met and we went through PD, there's a really big push for us to even have teachers access SEL webinars. So we anticipated, hopefully through our push, that we're gonna have people take advantage of it. You know, between not being able to go anywhere and pandemic fatigue, which is so real, and then this year, not being able to sub my teachers. Because in the past, I would have been able to do it during the school day where nobody wants to do it when they get home now. I don't want to do it when I get home. Where in the past, people would be anxious to, you know, sign up for a webinar that started at 3 and ended at 6. So we're doing a real push, and I say webinars because we're not anticipating we're going to be able to go lots of places anyway. We also have scheduled to send a group of teachers back to the Connecticut Reading Conference, which traditionally we've done a whole slew of teachers under my language arts person. But it really is about that money's been moved to other years, and I feel like we're so far behind. And again, it's not because people don't want it, they can't. There's just nothing left in the well at the end of the day.
So I guess a follow-up comment, I guess, would be, can you make a recommendation to match at the other 3 schools the amount of professional development support for those teachers?
My sense is we should leave that to the principals and Dr. Rodriguez.
So,
Yes, Ms.
You can certainly, actually, you can make a motion to add money to the budget at the time when we're doing our budget discussion. Okay. If you would like to see that stuff, and that was something that was,
Thank you for that, but I also want to say that one of the things, and I didn't get a chance to say this in my presentation, is we talked with principals and really started with what we call a zero-based budget, so it wasn't just, here's your allocation, move the money around, really be thoughtful about what you need, because again, not every building is the same. There might be, it's staffing differences, someone might have already had responsive training or whatever it is and don't need it. So just be mindful of that as well. And they did ask for what they really truly need.
Ms. Sherman, yes.
and you've been mindful a couple times, so it's a great lead-in. So my question was, and I just have to say, I love the way that you formatted your presentation on priorities. I think that was a really great overview, especially for new board members. So I love how you did that, and especially Mr. Napolitano, this kind of goes to what you were talking about, and the culture school climate. So I know that Millie has a mindfulness classroom, which hopefully we'll be able to stay, but maybe it'll be a mindfulness hallway or closet at some point. But I'm just wondering, I know there was a talk at some point, and I've lost track of it through the pandemic, but do you all have one in your building? And you do not?
We were like this with a new classroom. We have a makerspace room.
Okay. So are you finding, thank you, are you finding that, that students and teachers are engaging more with the mindfulness activities than they have in the past, just as a response to the pandemic?
I think so, yes. They're taking more brain breaks. They're like doing things to be self-aware. They're working with their lessons. They're constantly working with their counselors and their behavior interventionists to get ideas too of what they can do with students, because it has been complicated. They have not been able to be together. They've had, but they've been really creative in their opportunities for how they do things within the school day to provide, to allow for that. So I think they are working well together, and we're always open to more suggestions of what we can do to make it a better experience for them. And I think that the students are learning strategies to help themselves. And I think we see that in our building.
It's also used in a variety of ways. There's a lot of choice involved, so there could be a teacher that brings their whole class to to the mindfulness room, and the school counselor runs an activity for the entire class. They may go once a week, they may go once a month, they may go every other month. That's the teacher's choice. We also have our behavior interventionists, and they may bring, as part of an intervention plan, small groups to children at very targeted times of the day. If there's a student at 1 o'clock, a group of students at 1 o'clock, it's the afternoon, they're having a difficult time getting through their day, that might be a time where they take a group of kids to that room and they do some breathing or they do some mindfulness activities. Also, teachers can sign up for it, and they can bring their own kids and they can do something themselves in the room. A lot of the rooms also have buckets with activities that they can just use in a quiet setting. So there's a variety of uses of the room, and I believe we're all just beginning to scratch the surface and explore.
I just want to add one thing too. But one thing we try to incorporate each day, or as part of during the week, is quiet time. And we know as adults, but also children, quiet time is really important. Having being able to quiet your mind. School's a busy place. There's a lot going on, and having those times where we can quiet our minds and be able to do activities that kind of soothe and make it a little easier for us is really important for children. And I think that's gone a long way to helping them regulate throughout the day.
Every time I have a question, somebody talks and answers my question. But to kind of go along with the SEL you're talking about, with like the lunch bunch groups, and I know there's certain parts that were targeted towards behavioral issues. Are you seeing an increase in that, like, from before the pandemic to now, the increased amount of students that need that? And are there things that you were doing before that you're kind of targeting all students now that maybe were just left for behavioral?
I think we're seeing an increase in student behavior. I wouldn't, I speak for Sandy Hook. We're fortunate right now that we don't have any students that are having a real difficult time regulating themselves. I think our uptick in behavior has been in focus, in engagement, in getting back in the routine. In the beginning of the year, we had tons of situations where we were teaching kids how to play with one another, because there have been so many months that have gone by that they were in the living room with their brother, and we know that two brothers in the living room is different than how you handle something on the playground. And so that's what we love about elementary school, because that's why we're there, right? We're there to say, you can't wrestle, you do that on the couch, you can't do that on the playground. So I think in our situation, we've seen kids with a lot less focus, we've seen a lot more antsy behavior, which the mindfulness activities have really helped with. I think we've had to back up. I think one of the comments that we've seen worldwide, and certainly all over the U.S., is second graders are now first graders in a lot of ways, socially, emotionally. Anybody who's a parent knows that what we did when we talked about when we were home with our kids for 4 and 5 months wasn't ideal, right? So sometimes they didn't get out of their pajamas. So I think that a lot of that getting back into the routine and getting back into the engagement of school. We are fortunate that we, this year, we don't have children that are having a real hard time regulating themselves, and those kids, need extra support, and they do come, and I just say to people, their intervention is coping skills, and so, we all have had kids in our building that we just need to focus on intervening with and really teaching them coping skills because they don't have them. So there has been an overall buzz of kids, is the only way I can really describe it. But in general, they've done a really, really good job. This has been a lot harder on them than I think we realize, because they can't articulate that.
So you feel like you have enough staff and resources to handle the buzz?
I think what we've done is we've shifted our resources, right? So we've gone to mindfulness, we've gone to mind breaks, we've given teachers talk, and we can always use more social emotional staff, I think, but with the staff we have and with the curriculums we have been able to shift to whole class mindful activities, brain breaks. I think we've done some work with teachers around, having a different expectation for some behaviors. A lot of our kindergartners have never seen school. And that is usually we have 2 or 3 that have never seen school. And we had classrooms full that in there, which is okay, because then we just start from there, and we'll get where we need to get.
I was just going to add that the Hawley experience is our kindergarten class. We're finding a tremendous amount of students who either have not had a daycare or a preschool experience. And really the first half of the year was really just helping these children get into a routine of what school is. And you can't just get up and walk out of the room because you don't like what we're doing. And a lot of them are also turning 5 in December. I've seen a larger number of having a half a year of 4-year-olds. And all those are variables when there's no pre-experience coming into the school. So when Dr. Gambos talks about, third graders being second graders and first graders being kindergartners, our kindergartners are preschool, and when you match that with the rigorous curriculum, sometimes that sparks the behaviors, and that's where the mindfulness and the brain breaks and the breathing exercises have really been valuable.
Somewhat of a follow-up to that. So for every wonderful program or activity like this that you introduce, something in the school day is not happening, right? So there's like gives and takes, right? So when these programs come in, what's not happening? Is it the learning time? Is it?
Well, I can start it, and then I'd love for everyone else to speak. I think what we've become really good at is incorporating things into other subjects.
Okay.
And we've been blending things together. And the beautiful thing of an elementary school day is you have your kids all day. They're in one room. You have them. So math can run long. There's no bell. So if there's a day math is really buzzing and the kids are getting it, things are clicking, the reality is math may go a little longer and something gets cut, but the teachers are aware of that. And then another day they rebalance and they readjust. And it's kind of a juggling act like the spinning plates. And we've started to shift. I've told my teachers, you're driving yourself crazy with daily planning. You're better off planning now, looking at a week. What is it I want to get done all week? And then everything tends to fit in a little bit better because it is difficult to get everything into a full day. And then if you have a delay or early dismissal or an assembly, which we are looking forward to maybe having again, it is a lot being jam-packed in the day, but the teachers do a really good job in blending in the second steps curriculum into lessons, their morning meetings that they're having for responsive classrooms. They're doing a lot of the social studies work through language arts. So it's really learning how to combine and adjust.
Chris did a great job summarizing all of it, and having taught first grade, I know it's really difficult to do it all in a single day. It's almost impossible. So teachers are really creative in how they're able to incorporate all their subjects, and something's got to give at each and every day, and then you just pray and make that up at another time. And we're really trying to prioritize the most important things right now. So it's hard.
Yeah, that's how we do with vegetables in my house. I get it. Some days it's a good day. That's it.
And I think teachers are feeling that stress.
Yeah.
I think teachers are feeling that stress of there's too much to fit in. And we schedule mindfulness where maybe kids used to just talk, right? But they need that. So I think there is definitely the pandemic fatigue is also on teachers because they have not lightened up on the expectations for themselves. No matter how much we say, it's okay not to get to that. We understand the end of this year might not, they can't, at least in my building, there's such excellent professionals, they can't let up on themselves. And I spend more time telling them to, it's okay, we're gonna do it, it's gonna get there, you're amazing. So it's definitely being felt by teachers, all of this stuff being added to the plate, because as wonderful as all the mindfulness is, and it does work in the end, it is one more thing we have to pick the Yeti. We have to decide what 10 minutes that is, and we have to you feel bad if your neighbor got to the mindfulness room and you didn't, it definitely, I think the staff, the teaching staff is really the ones who are carrying so much of this on their shoulders this year.
Now, we're gonna have to move forward. I have, if that would be okay, but I have just one request, one, question, and then one nitpick, and I think the nitpick's for Tanya. One request, I like the way what you've done with your elementary program descriptions. My request is if you could put some amount of concept in terms of, on average, when these programs are actually taught. Like, is it every day? Is it typically how much a day? Or is it every 1 out of 6 days? That would be very useful. My question is, what do you have, what do you do about social studies and science, if that could also be added to this? And my nit is that I noticed that the smaller schools, Holly and Meadow, they're listed as 0.83 world language teachers, whereas the larger schools, Sandy Hook and Middlegate, are listed as 0.67 world language teachers.
I believe that's the additional half, it's probably another Meadow, so if we take the 0.25 and add it to the 0.6, that would be the point.
Right, so why is it we have more need for world language teachers in our less,
Yeah,
our
I
smaller
can't
schools?
answer to that as a need, I think it's more of a scheduling.
What we do,
Is it? Okay, okay. then-
it is scheduled. We look at how many sections we have, and we have to fit everything in a 6-day cycle. So we look at 2 gyms, 1 art, 1 world language, so on and so on. And we look at what we need. We all have 1 full-time person, so we look at how much they cover, and then we look at what we need to cover whatever's left over. So for example, with world language, even though we're both requesting a 0.25, they might not spend 0.25 of the week with me and not 0.25 at the head middle school. They'll be pooled with the world language teachers, and then we'll all share them. But because our enrollment is going up, we need more than the 1 person we have, where the larger schools already have a little bit more of a buffer built in.
Okay, thank you very much. It just seems a little counterintuitive. You guys are great. You gave a lot of information. The discussion, board members, it was an excellent discussion. I think we have a lot to think about and then go back and look at the particulars again. So thank you very much for all of the care you've taken and all of the insight you've added. Welcome. They're getting cookies. If you'd like some cookies.
So, hi everybody, I'm Matt Correa, principal over at Regional Media. Welcome to our new board members. I know some of you, and I know I'm being here, so just welcome, and I look forward to working with you more. I'm here to talk to you a little bit about Reed. It's a great place, and Reed is home to, as you know, our incoming students. Reed is home to 5th and 6th grade students. We get the opportunity to bridge all 4 elementary schools and bring students together for new friendships, new learning experiences, and really moving that child into that young adulthood, I like to say, especially when we get towards our 6th grade students. Your child's, or we always say, a child's visit to Reed might be short, but we hope that it's memorable, and we mean the same for our parents too. We only get 2 years with you unless you have 4 children, and we just hope it's a memorable experience, so we really do our best to make it something that you look back on with fond memories. So I'll tell you a little bit about Reed for those of you who don't know as much, things I'm proud of. And then I really laid out my presentation to talk about enrollment, staffing, SEL, and really just some curriculum that I'm really, really proud of. And it's moved forward, and it's really exciting. Curriculum is one of those things that I think that really is our opportunity to touch children, and I think that it does here. So let me begin by talking a little bit about Reed. Like I said, we've had a unique experience for 2 years where children come in and they get to meet 3 other schools for groupings of children. And here we are placed in a 2-person team, so we have one teacher who teaches reading, writing, and or reading, language, arts, and social studies. Their partner teaches math and science. So right there, it makes it a different experience from the elementary and prepares them more for that middle school setting they're going to get to in about 2 years. One other thing that makes us really unique here is that we offer all the specials at the elementary school too, but we have such a unique experience where our UA classes, our Untitled classes, they grow. And we have Project Adventure and STEM and health, and we welcome our kids to the world of music because that's where they get it here, orchestra, band, and more advanced chorus level. And those are really important to our kids. A lot of our kids love read because they love the UF. And they love coming here, and they do get 2 specials per day, which is wonderful, but they love the experiences they have here. And each class is diverse and very unique in nature. So it really, they find every student they really find a way to connect to read in some kind of way. One thing I'm very proud of here at Reed is that we have a full value contract and we're a full value school. And Sarah Strait is our project adventure teacher. She was trained in using the CASEL framework and using Project Adventure. So we're very proud to be one of those schools. Sarah's actually done such a great job. She has been hired by them to train other schools, and she is one of those facilitators now. We have grown our ideas of Project Adventure and really taken it to our reprisable values. And from there, these 7 attributes that we teach children, which are be here, be safe, be honest, let go of nuance, set goals, care for self and others, and choose time, really drive our day. They drive our morning announcements each day that I do. They drive the messages that we give to children each day. They guide our expectations for not only students but for staff too. When we have a full value contract, even I am applying myself to that. Everyone in this building is expected to be part of that. So we're really excited about that, and we really strive to do the best for kids. And that's how I'd like to tie it to this budget. When I created a budget, I really wanted to consider what was best for kids. And in meeting the staff, I really asked them to ask themselves, what is best for kids? I don't care what role you're in, what is best for kids in your role? So with that, I'll talk a little bit about the budget. It was really created, as I share with parents, with student safety is always my first priority no matter what. But thinking about the student learning experience day to day. Enrollment is important. SEL and your well-being is important for our staff as well. The curriculum needs for our kids, and again, tying it back to what is best for kids. And it's so nice to have an open dialogue with central office and be able to share what you think is best for kids and your ideas. So that is how this budget was crafted. So I'll go through a little bit and then give any questions I'd love to answer them. So first, I'll touch upon enrollment. Reed, as you saw in Dr. Rodriguez's budget, Reed's enrollment this year, 2021-22, is about around the 570 mark. We're staying about the same for next year. We're decreasing about 10 students. With the current budget that we have, or with the current enrollment that we have now, we're adequately staffed, which is wonderful. It's wonderful to have class sizes of 20 and 21. It's a blessing, but it's also good for kids. Next year, we see ourselves declining 10 students, but since our January comeback after the winter break, we've increased 5 already. So those 5 are in 5th grade. So as it is, this is something Dr. Rodriguez and I are always in communication to, and to our previous board members as well. 2 years ago, Dr. Rodriguez and I added a section, a cluster over the summer. We were popping with kids, and that's just, Lori and I were on top of it, and we did some July hiring because we had gone up 43 kids that summer. So similar to my elementary colleagues, the enrollment is something I'm looking at every single day to make sure we have enough student children, because in the cluster model, you need to have 2 teachers. So we're always, again, making sure we have that number. So we anticipate 5 extra students, or 5 additional students from this to be in 6th grade next year, possibly more, but again, very favorable class sizes, which I'm excited about. So grade 5, we have 281 students, 20 students per class, which is great. Grade 6, Dr. Rodriguez's budget has 287, but right now we anticipate 292. So again, just 5 new students, and they all, in the past week and a half, it was very interesting to see so many new students come in just past since January. And again, class size in 6th grade, even with that added number, 21. So that's wonderful. with enrollment always goes along with staffing as well too. And like I said, 2 years ago when we added that extra section, about a year and a half ago when we added that extra cluster, that's what we needed to make the number fit for what our kids needed. And we were able to do it with board support, so thank you. 2022-23 school year budget, we do not need additional classroom teachers. And what you'll see in my budget, which I requested to Dr. Rodriguez, was a 1.0 math intervention teacher and a 0.6 social worker. Those positions were positions I asked for last year. They were put in our budget and grant funded under the ESSER, and they're continuing on next year, which I'm really excited about. While we're only a couple months into the school year, the data that we have for the math intervention is proving to be really, really helpful. Our math intervention teachers are able to provide more tier 2 supports to our students, hopefully keeping them away from tier 3, but also working alongside the classroom teacher to really, we want to keep kids in the classroom as much as possible. So this has been an opportunity for our math intervention teacher to really work alongside that teacher and help catch those gaps or any misunderstandings as they take place. The point of social worker, I know a lot of you asked about social emotional learning, and in one conversation with Lori and sharing what we needed, that was something that we legally put in place. We had a 0.4 and that 0.6 allowed someone to be full-time here. It was definitely necessary, still is necessary, and again, just sharing some data with Lori, that's something that's in our extra budget for next year. So I don't have any operational budget requests after the grant for next year, which is wonderful. Again, we've seen a lot of success with the tier 2, tier 3 interventions for both math, and as Kathy talked about when she talked about SRBI, at this stage as well, the behaviors become a concern. The sadness becomes a concern. Students having difficult times and students having difficulties processing, especially at this age when their hormones are moving towards that middle school. These 2 support positions have really helped our kids this year. And SEL is very important to us, and similar to what Jim shared about our staff and having a pulse of our school's culture, that's always very important to us as well too, because our staff are people and their families, and we want to take good care of them, and they take good care of our kids. That's important. But long and short, the 2 added positions are beneficial, and once yes, we're going to have it. So probably next year at this time, we'll probably put in a request for these positions, all based on the data that I collect this year and into next year as well. The third section was SEL, and again, the capital framework really structures a lot of our beliefs, but also responsive classroom. And here we really follow a restorative practices model, and that's important to us. When I first started here, Ian and I had several conversations, and one of them was, Matt, we need this training, this is amazing. And to this day, I still tell Ian it was the best PD I've ever had in my career. It was amazing. And I got to take along just a couple of leftover teachers who never got the training. Prior to that, Ian had taken every single one of them to the training. So we're proud that we're a restorative practices training school. Similar to Kathy, I've had, if you followed along, I had 8 new staff members last year. So with my training, that's the first thing that I plan to have those new staff members trained on, whether we can get into restorative practices. It's amazing. It's a mindset. It's philosophy, and it's good treatment for students. And it really is impactful for students too. That's what I feel has helped our students who have had those behavior problems, the trouble with families, or the trouble with engagement in the classroom or other peers. That kind of training, that technique, I think, has really helped them solve their problems and move forward with them in a realistic way. So again, we're proud that we're restorative practice trained, most of us, and that's our philosophy here. As I shared, our week-night mornings are important, and this year, I think, Jen, you asked if you accept feedback from the staff to the elementary folks, and that was one thing, or Jen, you may have asked that, one of you asked that, and our plan for this year is based on our feedback from staff. So every other week, bi-weekly, we have a read-pride morning, which we drop everything in this building. The first hour of the day, every single staff member is involved in SEL. Every single staff member is teaching along with classroom teachers. First session of the month is taught by classroom teachers. The second session of the month is taught by unified arts teachers, counselors, support staff. We wanted our students to know that SEL is important. The entire building stops what they do to this is important to us, and we're all involved in it as well too. So that was based on the feedback, and I'm glad that we received that feedback, because instead of just having classroom teachers, it's so much more powerful and impactful when you have an entire staff believing in something and working toward it as a whole. It helps those 7 attributes that I shared with you before, those topics about being here, being honest, we're all focusing on the same thing. And it's what we really value here. So I'm proud to say we have a social emotional curriculum in the district, and I agree, we have a social emotional curriculum that we all follow to, which is great. And then lastly, curriculum, which this is something that really excites me and Ann knows. Last year, our 5th grade reading language arts curriculum went to the board and was approved, which was really exciting. That was work that Ann started with the team, and continuing on with that is the 6th grade work. It's going to be coming to you all later this year, which we're really excited about. Ann and I have seen so many great strides with the team and how they've evolved the curriculum for children. It's really great. We're also excited that you'll see our STEM curriculum this year for grades 5 and 6. STEM was started here a few years back, and we have a curriculum now that has been really shaped to meet what our 5th and 6th graders need. It also ties along with a lot of the science standards too, so we're really proud of that. We're on a pilot do for our social studies curriculum, so we have a new 5th and 6th grade social studies curriculum in place right now. It's exciting. You know, we spent 3 hours this past Friday during PLC time. I led the 6th grade, Ms. Connors, our assistant principal, led the 5th grade, and it was great. It was one of those meetings where teachers didn't want it to end. So it was like 3:30, and they're still going with their ideas, and we're revising and we're fine-tuning the curriculum. So hopefully you'll see that next year. This summer we're working on science and our 6th grade curriculum, fine-tuning that to present for next year. And lastly, we have some really great experiences this year with the religious curriculum. Our 5th grade teachers are now in their 2nd year of teaching it, most half of them, and the other half have done so well by being supported by the teachers who taught it last year. They're really in favor of what's offered to children. They're starting to see patterns and even shifting this lesson for that lesson really makes a big impact. We've also had ongoing PD, and a lot of times when we get a new program, we don't have ongoing PD, and Ian and Frank have made sure that we have ongoing support, like not just webinar, but ongoing support where the trainers see with just read intermediate school or the elementary schools, and it's been really helpful. So we've seen a lot of gains there too. I'm excited to see our kids from the elementary schools come up with this knowledge, because it's really surprising what they've already done in just 1 year with their curriculum. And in 6th grade, we're piloting 2 programs as well. So in where we house the incoming 4th grade students, we're also the bridge to the middle school. So that's really exciting too, because our goal is to make sure that our young adults in 6th grade leave here successful and successfully prepared to for great middle school experience. So thank you for all your support in advance, but if there's any questions about it, I'd love to answer them, or think about getting the answers. So
Questions? Ms. Herron?
Sure, I have actually 2 questions.
sure.
So the first one is on page 88, lists all your extracurricular activities, which I know are so meaningful. But I also know that a lot of those took a pause during COVID. So I guess I'm just wondering, are all of those back running, and how's that going?
Great. They're all back last year. I think my phone call to Tommy and Lori was, well, we have some extra money here because we can't have them. This year, they're all back, which is great. And Reed's biggest claim to fame, the ski club, is back. And that's, I can't tell you how many phone calls. The ski club going on, the ski club going on. I'm like, yeah. So it was actually really good. It was really good. That was a big conversation we had to make sure we were able to. That was something Lori asked about. Now that all our clubs are back, we have the funding that we need to support them this year and moving forward next year. So everything that was asked for, I calculated every staff member's salary with their staff level of what they would be offering, and asking for me to run this again next year. And there's still some room for a new club or something to pop up as well. So they're back, which is good.
So we're sitting in the library, and it's a wonderful library. I've had some questions around purchasing new books for the library, and I do notice that that's not aligned. So I don't know if that appears somewhere else in the budget, or how do you replenish books in the library as you start to take text out of circulation and you want to bring updated
Sure.
text back in?
Sure. So we're kind of in I'd say we're in a transitional phase. So 2 years ago, we hired a library media specialist who unfortunately joined us for 1 year, and then COVID hit, and she decided she needed to stay home with her family. We hired Sarah Wassley, which a lot of you know. Sarah was over at Hawley, amazing, and Sarah was here last year. This is a long 1-year position. So Sarah didn't really, she was teaching the classes that was before Spanish came here to read as well. So Sarah's work didn't focus on looking at the collection in the library, what needed to be refined, what needed to be updated. That has been her focus this year. And everything, right now she's working on a meeting. I personally didn't realize there was such a process to library media until in my last district I hired a new library media specialist. I didn't realize that a book should be read this many times and then it's time to retire it. Once you have those books that have, it's great to have a collection of 20,000 books, but if 10,000 of them haven't been checked out and have mold in them and are just not, you know what I mean? It happens. So that's something I learned a lot about in that process. So as Sarah and I have been talking, we've been talking about a wish list for her. And she has made several updates this year, so it does come out of her budget. We haven't had to rebuild an entire section, or I would say spend $5,000 on books, but there is money in our library budget, which we have. She has typically, I think it's about $17,000, which is a pretty healthy budget. So she is able to spend a good amount of money purchasing what is needed. She also wants to make meaningful purchases. So in her role transition is not just having library classes, she's pushing into classes, she's seeing what the kids need, what the kids want. Social studies with our new curriculum is going to be her first real focus area. So we want to offer all children in this building and what we call an essential experience with our social studies curriculum in each grade level. That will be run by Sarah. So again, she wants to make those purchases in a mindful way. So next year at this time, I brought it up, you may see an increase in my library budget based on what Sarah feels that we need.
I'm sorry, I'm just maybe not missing it, or I just don't see it in the library media budget. Is it under instructional supplies or?
Well, page 82,
Right.
instructional supplies.
So it is under instructional supplies. Okay, that was my question. So it's $12,500, including the new money for the new catalog. Thank you.
Questions, Mr. Ramsey?
I just want to start with a comment. I so appreciate your statement in the beginning where you are adopting some of the tenets of Project Adventure in the school culture, including even yourself. I think that's tremendous. That program's always been kind of a best kept secret, and I'm really happy to see it emerging now and interfacing with the social emotional learning, because they've really been doing that all along. Now, I just have a kind of a simple question, but I noticed I'm not supposed to add money to any of that, but you didn't make a request for any equipment or supplies this time. Now, I know the middle school, when they come up, they have made a request because they needed new harnesses and ropes. I assume you have a cycle of when you need to replace these non-expendable items?
We do. So right now, Project Adventure's budget is actually lumped in with our health budget. Michelle Ayala and Sarah Strait work very collaboratively together. So there is a line item under the health budget that has room for Sarah, our Project Adventure teacher, to purchase these items. In regards to like PE, we do go through one notice is like our PE budget increased this year by a few $100 because going through our closet, we realized these snacks have happened. And this is what we need to replace. So we are going through a cycle next year of replacing just a few items, but they are in a forward projection where we replace this year, we replace that, and then next year. Sarah had previously purchased so many things for Project Adventure when Ann actually brought it to read. So I give Ann my thanks to that because I walked into a school that had that mindset of Project Adventure, and I was able to take it with the staff and adjust it a little bit, but really perfectly with my own mindset. So.
More questions? Okay, I am faced again looking at your description of the courses. Excellent, really excellent. And you do talk about the amount of time spent per 6-day schedule. My question is, I just can't seem to find that in science. I
science class, so science and social studies is every day, and what our students do is, so you're in that cluster model, one teacher teaches science, one teacher teaches social studies. This year we actually piloted where each student would have science for 5 weeks, then they would go to social studies for 5 weeks, and then back to science, back. So each student would have 3 cycles of science, 3 cycles of social studies. But that's something I'd be happy to update in here, if we have that moving forward for anything about questions about it.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you for pointing that out.
Well, I just want to, you recall that Dan spoke to us in curriculum instruction about that cycling. And it works, I imagine, that it works very well to have that block of time so that children are not being interrupted to then stop science to go social studies.
It's a sacred time in the curriculum, but what's great about it is, the worst thing is teaching a lesson, finishing and saying, I'm not going to get to that for another, until like 2 cycle days later. Now it's the next day, we're picking up right with this. So it's actually, it was a pilot we worked on, and we're filtering through this year, but a lot of people have really shared that our staff has shared it's really working well. So, and they're teaching the standards, they're teaching what we weren't able to get to before. So it's really great.
So, last call for any more questions. You're a wonderful role model. I mean, it's what the kids are doing to live what you expect the kids to live. It's just phenomenal. So thank you very much, and we look forward to supporting you in this year.
Thank you, everybody.
You have heat in the library?
What?
You have heat in the library?
Haven't till budget.
Oh.
No, we do. I'm not sure.
It turns off at night.
I was gonna say,
It's on a timer.
I was going to say, Dr. Rodriguez talked about cost savings. I think we saved it this hour. We start saving. We crank it during the day. Yes.
That's how we have to quickly. Dan's going to turn it on then.
Good evening, and happy New Year to you. First, to see everybody here, thank you for your commitment to our students and our schools. I'm confident that you have seen the middle school budget, and I thank my colleagues for going first, because a lot of the programs that they described, the middle school has as well. They're developmentally, changed to, meet the needs of 7th and 8th graders. One of the things that we were asked to do is to bring forth a budget that supports our students, academically and socially and emotionally, while being fiscally responsible. So again, I'd like to share some things that are unique to the middle school, but again, we do have that vertical alignment of all these different programs that start off in the elementary and then move through read and then to the middle school itself. But what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about our master schedule. Last year, the board was so incredibly supportive of us going to a new master schedule to really meet the needs of our students. And along the way, we were able to, put together a program along with their clusters that really can support the enrollment. For every year that I've been here in the last 9 years, I've always had to go to the point of, looking at reducing staff due to enrollment decline. This is the first year where we're moving forward to having a stable projection next year that really reflects what we have this year. So we're right about 600, and next year we'll be right about at 600 again. So we're really going to be able to keep the staffing that we have, which is really an important aspect of the school, to keep the staff that you have there, for multiple years, so they can get accustomed to the culture of the school, the district, and they really bring forward those programs. And one in particular we'll talk a little bit about in a moment is Project Adventure, we're really excited about as we defined it at the middle school. So again,
Our cluster configurations will stay the same. We have 3 at each grade level. And as you may recall, is that we added a world language teacher to every cluster, so that rounds it out to 5. But we've also been able to add a special education case manager to each cluster, which has made a tremendous difference in our ability to support kids. In years past, a special ed case manager would work with 2 clusters, so they were bouncing back and forth through 2 different groups. Now they really have the time to dedicate to that one cluster, which has made, again, a significant difference. And it's allowed us to also introduce classes in the area of math and language arts, which is an amazing opportunity for our students to really be in classes that the regular curriculum is being taught, and they're having that opportunity to have that exposure, but they're having that support and their needs met immediately if they're running into some difficulty, which is really just an amazing blessing for us in middle school. You may also know that we, as I said, we've added world language to each cluster, but we've also added a section in each cluster of what we're calling conversational Spanish, because we do have some students that do have some unique needs and that need other time during the day to get some different supports. So instead of having to be in a conventional Spanish class, they're actually being in a class where they have a lot of flexibility. And teachers are using the curriculum through Rosetta Stone to provide a really more of an individualized approach to teaching them Spanish, and that's going extremely well. So the teacher has a chance to do other lessons, but many times if the student is only in that class maybe 4 of the 6 cycle days, those 2 days that they're not there because they're getting related services, it allows them on the days that they are there not to miss anything because it's so individualized. And kids really seem to enjoy that. So this is the first year that really every student has the exposure to a world language, which is really a unique thing. We're very, very, very happy about that. We also, about this time last year, we surveyed students about some potentially new course offerings. And in the end, there were quite a few that we surveyed the students on. And in the end, kitchen science and project adventure got the overwhelming votes. So those are 2 classes that we instituted this year. And we've done that in a kind of a unique way as well, is that instead of having kitchen science 1 cycle day, 1 day during the cycle week, and then project adventure, we've semesterized. So students would get, as Matt indicated, you're not like getting it here, then a week later. So this worked out really, really well. And the neat thing with kitchen science is that students are learning a lot about things that are happening in the kitchen, but it's from a science point of view. What does yeast do? What does it happen when you fry an egg? And all those different scientific kind of things. And one of the things that you may know from back in the day, you never want to eat anything in a science lab. This is the exact opposite. You end up cooking things that you will end up enjoying. So very, very, very popular with the students and well received. Project Adventure, while we have that as part of our curriculum, it's now a separate class for students. And it's really a remarkable experience. And they've taken the things that they've learned here and read with the fully valued contract and really had a chance to put it into action in a number of different activities that they do. And this just before the snow started flying, we had students out on the high ropes course. We're very fortunate in the back piece of our property to have these opportunities for challenge by choice. So you're not required to do it, but you have these students that really wanted to do it. But it's a whole process where all of their classmates are part of that experience. And the most amazing thing is the teachers basically take a half step back and say, we've taught you what you need to know, you guys need to go and demonstrate you have that ability to do it. And just to see these middle schoolers really have safety in mind, figure out how they can support each other and cheer each other on. And these kids climbing up way higher than I ever would want a middle schooler to go, but they're definitely up there in good hands and safely coming back. And really, you can see it on their faces, that pride. But that was a product of all the years before that they've had that experience and being able to put it in action. So we're very, very thrilled about that. In addition to the Kitchen Science and Project Adventure, students have the opportunity to participate in, in art, which is, we have two of, I think, finest art teachers around that provide students with an amazing experience. And they're really working on some diversity, equity, and inclusion activities right now, which they're building a storybook, and they're using art to kind of define those things. So it's just really taking it to the next level. Along with that, obviously, students have the chance to do things with STEM. They're in our computer integration class, where they're learning a lot about coding. They're really having that great opportunity to program little robots and do all sorts of things. They also have an opportunity in our technology education class, where they're learning a lot of things about simple machines, but also being able to do some really great hands-on experiences, which can include 3D printing and some, different, opportunities to build bottle rockets and all sorts of great things. So a lot of great things are happening. And obviously, our students are able to participate in music with band, orchestra, choir, in our music lab. We also are so thankful to, again, as I said, to the board to support our special education students. But we have two unique programs at the middle school: our SAIL program and our RISE program. Really, programs that really meet the unique needs of our learners. And it's really been a great experience for our students and staff to have that opportunity to keep kids in our own school. Traditionally, years ago, some of those students might have needed to be outputs. These are kids that we love, and we're just grateful that we have the opportunity to keep them right in our school. Additionally, our middle school is blessed to have a school-based health center, so that this way we can take care of our students that may be feeling ill, but also there's a social worker that's part of that organization. If you've ever had a chance to come to the middle school, they're literally right across the hall from the nurse. So sometimes if the student isn't feeling well, they've been able to go right across the way. It's really been a blessing during the pandemic to be able to have that, because it's been able to help us in a myriad of ways that you can imagine. This year, we've had the pleasure of having a teen talk counselor. It's a program that was at the high school, so now we have a counselor that's working at the middle school, working predominantly with groups, so which is another great experience for students to have someone that they can talk to, and have an opportunity also to be along with some like-minded peers, or maybe peers that have been in the same situation, or like things that have happened to them, so that this way they feel supported and not alone. And I think that that's one of the biggest challenges for middle school. They're making this change from being, I don't want to say compliant to their parents, and they're now really identifying more with their peers, and having that opportunity to potentially make some hard choices. We really want them to be well equipped to face those challenges. So we pride ourselves on really providing the students with support wherever they are, and again, using Second Step, but also using Project Adventure and having all these other professionals around really lets us take care of students at every step of the way. So again, we're very proud of what's happening at the middle school, and you probably had a chance to look over the budget. And if you have any questions,
Ms. Harris?
Just a quick question. On page 96, it's the world language budget, and you mentioned that creating a program of conversational Spanish. This 21,000 for the mostly it seems like materials to supplement that. Is that going to be an annual cost going forward? And how I noticed that in this current year we're still only spending the 700. So how are you able to implement this program without that funding?
That's a great question. So this school year, those monies were grant funded for all the Rosetta Stone. That now, for this coming year, the 22-23, that would happen for those costs. So we're trying to estimate approximately how many students will be part of Rosetta Stone. And it also reflects on the bottom there is the French and the Spanish workbooks, because those are always been in there. Those are consumables. But yes, and the other part too is that many of our requests, we also look for grants all over the place. We are so blessed to have Kristen Larson. And, you know, if you had a chance to come to the middle school, we worked on a grant application to Steelcase, which we got furniture this past year. And our library media center was just stayed beyond because of that. But it's all those kind of things, and so she's been able to help not only with Escher funds, Novo, but also we've had a great opportunity to work with the Newtown Educational Foundation and our PTAs. And so I've said to my staff, look, if this is what you need, we'll find money. And so we've made phone calls, we've knocked on doors. So again, the Rosetta Stone is something that we're really proud of because it really allows every student to have that opportunity. So as they leave the middle school and they go to the high school, at least they have some of that world language under their belt, which makes that opportunity at the high school accessible.
Tom, for the benefit of all of us here again, would you mind very briefly explaining how the Rosetta Stone ties in for those children with their reading? Because that's how it all developed.
So Rosetta Stone is actually, the company is also part of some reading programs. So they really had a lot of experience on how to teach individuals different pieces of language acquisition. One of the things that we were mindful of is that in a given day, students that are in special education, they also need other related support, such as speech, language, counseling. So we have to resource. So we have to be mindful not to, hook up their days so that they have no opportunities to go to their unified arts. Because that was the experience in the years past. You had to come out of something. So that this way, Rosetta Stone, we looked at the continuity of what the high school was doing, and that seemed to make a lot of sense. If that's already an investment that they're making there with their students, it didn't make any sense for us to look at a different program kind of continuity. But what that also gives us the opportunity, once those students get to the high school, they really are in line with what their course offerings are with Spanish.
Let me just interject on that. Sure. When, in the past, correct me if I'm incorrect here, in the past, those students coming from Reed, whose reading levels were not what they should be, were then not placed in their language. And so therefore they had to take reading.
Correct.
So they were not getting the world language.
That is correct.
Now they have the opportunity to continue with their reading progress, which they desperately need, but they also have the opportunity to delve into a world language through this program called Rosetta Stone. So they're all getting a world language experience, especially before they get to the high school, because, as you well know, they all need it to graduate.
Yeah, so the students that needed a higher level of reading support, they're getting that now more to push in through the SRBI process for their reading interventions. So they're still getting their needs met, but we've also structured the day so that it's really John is absolutely right, that students now need that little language experience.
Mr. Randy? Follow? Was yours a follow-up?
No, I'm going
Mr. Coussant, then.
To go along with the world language track that we're on, does this budget represent what you need with the kids coming up from 6th grade next year? You've got kids that have been taking Spanish from K-6. Does this represent what you need to reconfigure the Spanish program, or whatever needs to happen to make the Spanish program vertically aligned with those kids that adopted K-6 Spanish?
Yeah, so the nice thing is that we have a world language teacher on every cluster, so that allows us to, again, to be able to differentiate in the classes. And we're actually looking forward to those students coming up with that background knowledge in Spanish, which then is going to also push, our curriculum at the middle school, so there's going to be some curriculum work there as well. But then also then that is going to go into the high
do want to thank my three colleagues for bringing up the world language, because that was a question I had also. And I know I had a lot of difficulty with it when I was a student, and it sounds like, you know, the new program is really going to be very effective, so I think it's a really great thing. I'm also very appreciative, you seem to emphasize a lot of hands-on learning in the revamping of the project adventure, the kitchen science system, so on and so forth. It must bring you a great deal of pleasure to visit those classrooms. And I'm just wondering if you notice with the teachers, you know, because one of the things I'm interested in is the motivation and the joy of teaching, because that transfers on to the students. I'm wondering if you see a sparkle in the teachers that are teaching these areas. And then after you answer that, I have a specific question about music.
You know, I think that they're spot on, because, you know, the students are engaged in the curriculum at the time, enjoyable, and the opportunity for resources. That's where what I do appreciate about, you know, our philosophy. We went to the teachers and said, what do you need? And so some of the teachers, especially the hands-on teachers, we almost said, wow, okay, this is a lot more. You've not like tripled your budget request, but let's look where we can find the money. And as I said, the educational foundation has been quite generous with our technology education class, our PTA, teacher grants that fund a lot of things. So we've been able to supplement some of those requests, but you're absolutely right. Those classes that have a lot of hands-on, they do have a higher level of consumable. So those teachers have to request more than they have in the past, but we've been able to support that. Hopefully that will also see that as a great learning opportunity for our kids and support their requests.
And of course, when the students feel success in one area, that transfers to other areas. You know, that's a pretty well documented fact. But my question about music. I know you have, for instructional supplies, you've got $2,630 for instructional supplies, and then you have for equipment repairs, $3,000. And just generally speaking, I'm wondering, I know that sometimes it's effective to purchase new instruments, and sometimes it's effective to repair old ones. Have you had any kind of discussion with that with the teachers in terms of efficiency of spending money?
Absolutely.
New versus repair?
Yeah, Michelle Hiskovich has been so hands-on with working with the music department, really, you know, fine-tuning what, and the vendors that are part of that process. I think the last, you know, obviously 2 years have been a challenge, trying to handle all that. But the one thing that we know is that, again, looking at any of the repairs versus buying new, and 2 years ago, we purchased quite a few larger instruments that are more difficult for kids to take home. So they would keep their own instrument at home, like, you know, cello or even some of the bass, if you will, so that this way they didn't have to transport that. So can you imagine trying to bring that on a school bus? So we have those already in place. So again, we replaced a number of the instruments in years past, and now it's basically the maintenance.
Ms. Larkin?
Quick question that I was going to ask them, but what's driving the increase in supplies? 67%. Was that when you were referring to page 88?
Sure.
That 611?
Okay, so
When you were talking about the hands-on stuff.
that's part of it, but there are things like education science. There's about $5,000 worth of supplies that have been ordered. Those that are done, obviously, that's in there. But we also have quite a bit allocated for our library media center, because we've had the opportunity to have an amazing library specialist who's in there and has been there for now 80 years, and has really gone through and done a comprehensive look at all the books that we have there, and has really noticed that it's time for us to kind of make a substantial investment in that. Dr. Rodriguez and I had a long conversation about that, and because they did all their homework and they were supported by the other meantime, we've made contacts with the Rotary Club. We made contacts with some groups in town that are making some donations. So we're really enthusiastic about this opportunity. What we've also done in the media center with the grant that we got from Steel Cases, we've changed the whole layout of that area of the media such that kids are really interested in coming to the media center. One of the things that we know is that the opportunity then to get books in their hands that they have interest in. And that's really why this big investment of trying to find those books that kids are reading. And it's really a great opportunity at some point to come and have a conversation with Andrew St. Angelo, because he's really so passionate about what kids need and want, and we really feel that we can hopefully support him in this endeavor. So we get that whole line.
Any other questions? Okay, my standard, the description you have of your courses, if it was possible, give a sense as people go through this, how much is spent in the 6-day cycle on these courses. That would be, I know you can't review the whole schedule, but in some sense, it would be very good. So, it's music to my ears, cello and basses included, to just hear that some of the work that the board has done in the past has been so effective, and to hear your summary of all of the good things that came out of the schedule, the fact that the co-taught classes really are making a difference, that there's now access for the special ed students to world language and unified arts that there wasn't quite that access before. And that is, that's just wonderful for a board member who voted in favor of that after the year. Thank you very much. What I'd like to do at this point is, are we done? I think we're done with the budget. Yeah, so all of you, thank you very, very much for coming here, representing the budget as beautifully as you did. And you may have more questions, but if you do, then we will go through Dr. Rugby and she will forward it to you. You're very welcome to leave, or now we're just going to close up a little bit of house cleaning. I'd also like to call a 5-minute break for recess, and if we can get back here at about 9:51, 9:52, that would be great. People of the audience, we've got coffee and cookies up there. You're welcome to enjoy.